I want to provide an update to the Canada-US trade situation. In early June, I provided a video on my Substack site called Response to the USA and Canada Trade Issues. And I outlined my deep concerns, and sadly, all my concerns are coming true. The current US-Canada trade situation is now a disaster for both nations, and certainly a huge problem for Canada that has far less negotiating power and much more to lose. The recent breakdown in reaching a trade deal and Carney walking away from any more negotiations and talking about retaliatory tariffs makes it very clear that we are now looking at a trade war between the two nations. It's also clear that this is a prelude to a possible dissolution of the USMCA and very hard times ahead for Canada. It's clear that Trump and his team are not interested in offering Canada free market access to the US trade bloc, as they don't see Canada, based on past and current negotiations, prepared to act as a local free trade partner and a supporter of a North American trade bloc. The last minute changes to the US trade offer was clearly an attempt by Trump to signal the conditions for membership to the North American trade bloc that Trump is building. It's clear that Trump and his team have had it with Canada and its past and present wacky leadership that is heading in completely the opposite direction from where Trump wants to go. Trump will continue to tariff Canada the same way he would tariff the other global trade participants to force the reshoring of manufacturing capacity and wealth back to the USA trade bloc. It's mostly due to many years of bad trade relationship building on the part of Canada. The rot started with the prior Liberal government in Trump's first term. Trudeau made many mistakes with his U.S. relations. And back then, his deputy, Christina Freeland, continuously showed her disdain for the USA trade bloc policies that were to move away from the debacle of a global free trade. A good example of this dangerous friction was her speech at the Diplomat of the Year award in Washington, D.C. in Trump's first term. Now, she made it very clear that she was opposed to Trump's plans for a more regionalized North American trade bloc and slammed him for moving away from global free trade. She, like many global free traders, think that it's a God-given right for one nation to trade with another. Wrong. Global free trade has been a wealth transferring, prosperity killing disaster for most Western nations. Trade outside of a nation must be an option of last resort and to be only undertaken when such trade is a true benefit to the participating nation. The USMCA trade negotiation and settlement made in Trump's first term proved to him that the Canadian leadership will not comply with a true North American free trade bloc. And he stated recently that Canada wants the benefits of being a US state, but won't act like one. And then more recently, Carney demonstrated he is not at all aligned with Trump's policies by promoting the elbows up language even before being elected. And then many more damaging, irresponsible actions by provincial leaders in Canada that have added to the relationship problem. Many of these uh, provincial leaders have not grasped that the USA is now following a trade bloc approach. So they still continue to believe that the USA owns or owes them free trade. And so they treat anything to the contrary as unwarranted attacks and disrespect and are quick to want retaliatory action that will further destroy any opportunity for resolution. The speech by Carney at the WEF did the most damage. He tagged Trump as the enemy of the rest of the nations for moving away from the concept of global free trade. And even more damaging, Carney's recent trade relationship building with China and other global actors. All this has proved to Trump that Carney and his ideology is never going to be a good and trusted trade partner aligned with a North American trade bloc approach. Carney is not doing his job. He was hard to get a deal with Trump. And in fact, he's now on a completely different policy page from Trump. And due to his actions, he's taken Canada out of the USMCA and into the global free trade environment, which will be a huge mistake. Carney's plan is to go after resource exports with others outside of the North American trade bloc, but it's very doubtful such export trade can happen without even more global trade deals that will bring even more damaging, duplicitous, wealth-draining imports. And these will further reduce the value-adding contribution for local employment within our economy. So Carney is proving to be another dangerous green globalist that won't accept a trade bloc approach. It's clear that Canada will need a new leadership team to reset the relationship and embrace the true North American trade bloc that Trump is installing for North American citizen prosperity. We need far less green global socialist leaders such as Trudeau, Freeland, and Carney. If Canada is to retain any prosperity for its citizens, it needs to be a close, interconnected, and aligned free trade partner with the USA and be fully participating in making Trump's North American trade bloc a success. We need to work more directly and constructively with Trump and start explaining how Canada can be a much more useful North American trade bloc partner. This will need a discussion on a common long-range vision. We got to stop acting like two-faced globalists demanding that we deserve a local free trade deal while visibly showing disdain for the US trade bloc direction and by still undertaking global free trade without any coordination with the trade bloc. We need to start asking how we can earn the right to get back inside that North American trade bloc that is 75% of our trade and at least 25% of our economy, with our much larger neighbor who has a far better level of growth and prosperity that we are clearly walking away from, and he lives right next door. It's clear that the concept of a localized trade bloc will be adopted into the future across many Western nations, whatever the political stripe in power. The alternative is the continued exposure to the uncontrolled wealth transfer of the free global market. All that remains is what shape these localized trade blocs will take and who will be in them. For more on my views on trade, industry, reshoring, and climate change, go to my book website at www.nigelsouthway.org, and you can access my Substack site directly from there.